Stan with 3D PT. So for this one, I'm going to do a mason jar project. And mason jars have always been an American classic for storing food or other products, but you could also incorporate them into many things to make anything from like a dispenser to some tools. And so a long time ago, actually about 4 years ago now, I actually did a blog on one of these mason jar designs. And so you could actually make something like a dispenser and incorporate your jar on top. And when you turn this, you'll actually get candy out of it. So this was actually a simple design that another person did. I'll include the link below or in the description. But I found that actually to do this, I use this at a lot of trade shows because candy attracts people to your booth. But before, it was originally just flat along the side. And the mechanism inside is very simple. It's just a ramp that goes to here, and then the knob here. This is your dispenser that turns. So this doesn't have any coin mechanism or anything. It's just a little dispenser, and it has a retain clip that goes here. So this was primed to be modified, and so I'm going to do that now in Tinkercad as an example of how you can modify things that have already been designed. So in Tinkercad, start by opening up a new file, and over here you have three options: import, export, and send to. So I'm going to import the design that I downloaded earlier. And this is going to be as an STL file. So I want the main snack body. And it gives me this option here. It tells it what it is, the scale, and all the dimensions. This particular piece is probably pretty large, so you want to check and make sure it'll fit on your build plate. Some of the smaller desktop printers won't be able to handle it, but not a problem for mine. So I'm going to import it. And rotate it around. So now I have the basic shape that I want to modify, because on the sides here you can see it's flat, and if I make it transparent by hitting the letter T, I can see the mechanism inside of it. Again, this one doesn't have a coin-op mechanism or anything like that. There are coin-op ones you can download and print. You're going to be doing a lot of fitting though if you do that. So this one's a lot simpler. And for everything I do, this is an absolute conversation starter. So now that I have the basic shape, I want to put a slot in that's easy to get business cards into. And so under the shape generator menu, there's a trapezoid. And right now it's, you just have to work the shape. So I'm going to hold the shift key to rotate it flat. So I'm going to roll it first, and then I'm going to yaw it 90 degrees on the z-axis. And I want to make a space with a little bit with a lip to hold in this. I can tell right now that's going to be a little bit too wide and too deep because it's going to cut through that. So I can make it thinner, say about 30. Now I want to make sure it's not going to hit any of the other internal parts. So look all around. And it is a little bit off the build plate, which is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and make it about yay high, because I do want to have a little bit of a lip up here. And if I drop it down, that's going to be too far. But pick it up maybe about 10 millimeters off the build plate. That gives it a good ledge up here and here. So check everything around it. And now if I do this, I'll make this a solid. So I'll hit letter T. Make this a hole. And if I group this, it now puts a nice area in there to do that. Get some actual business cards now and check, because you want to make sure that this area here, you have enough space here. So I'm going to actually undo that, double check that width at the top of the pyramid, or top of the trapezoid. So on your shape menu, when you click on the trapezoid, it actually does give you base width and top width. So your card is going to be about 51 millimeters wide. So it needs to be, let's say, about 55. Just to give it a little slop. And now, when you try that again, that's still going to fit just fine. And you can play with the depth, but just be aware that you want some support around this. So maybe have it go in about 10, 15 in. You could also change the thickness, because right now it's 30. And on this original one, I went in about 25 millimeters. So I'll go ahead and change that to 25. So now I could actually use the Align tool, and I could align it on the edge and center, and even center it up on the Z-axis. But that's a little bit higher than I want. I want some lip up here. So I'm just going to drop this down back to where I had it before, at 10 millimeters. So I'm going to use the Align tool. I'm going to center on the X-axis center, and I'm just going to have it touching the Y-axis right. So now when I do that, you can see here that it's got that hatched pattern that drives you crazy, but it is centered. So if I group it, it puts that hole in the side, which is what I want. And this will be the cavity I use to set up the business cards. So next we want to put a edge or a lip to actually retain the cards inside the holder. So the easiest way I found to do that is just get a thin box, make it maybe about 2 millimeters thick by the width of the hole. We're going to put it on the edge there. Get it just about that width. Make sure it goes all the way across. So you could use your F or focus fit to view and carefully pull that across that space. And use that to flush that in. Now remember, you could always use your Align tool. Get it to line flat on the edge. And let's make this 80 across, since that's the size of the trapezoid. So now that that's fit with the edges, I could center this. And need to make it a decent height to hold the card in. So I think on the original one, I've got it about 45. That seems to be a good height. Because we want the cards to be held in, but still be able to drop out when someone grabs them. go ahead and change the color on that. So when you're done, you can go ahead and group that together. So this is how you can import an object and modify it in Tinkercad. So for this one, I took the basic shape of the dispenser body, added a slot for business cards, engraved it on the front, and added texture to the side. And you could go and further customize this in many different ways. Obviously, if you need to do improvements like adding some weight to the bottom, you could do that. And as you print the other pieces, you can make sure they fit here, or you could change the design. So I actually modified the retainer clip and the knot, the handle that came with this original file. But you get the idea that you can modify the pieces as you see fit. And the advantage of this is you could do a lot with this in terms of either fixing other files that aren't very good, or you could take other designs and modify them for your specific needs. So later on, I'll cover parametric design, which is programmable design you could do in this. But for right now, this would be something different that you could do for like a display piece or a trade piece. And this is only one example of you can modify just about anything that's designed for 3D printing. So look through all the file sharing sites like Tinkercad, Producer Printers, My Mini Factory. Find files that you like but want to modify. And for this activity, you don't have to modify a candy dispenser like I did, but do find something that was made from fruit or mason jars and modify those. So with this, you could have other options to customize or do more design work on this. So you could put in text and do an emboss or engrave. The difference is emboss would actually go into your print like this. Now, or I'm sorry, engrave would go into your print like this and would produce a hole. Embossing means it stands out, so it would stand out as a solid object. So just be aware if you emboss, you're going to have to provide support material for all these overhangs. I prefer to do engraving. It generally looks a little bit better to engrave something, and in terms of printing, it just works a little bit better on that. So I'm going to engrave this real quick. So I can also put texture on the surface here. So under the shape generator menu, there's a weave pattern, and I expanded it to 15 row weaves and 15 row widths. And with that, I'm going to pitch it 90 degrees. Now I'm going to use this to actually put it into the side here on my piece. Now I could have it textured coming out or in. And I could play around with alignment to do that, because if I do this to align it, it's not going to show up. And that's because the alignment tool works on the footprint of the shape. So unfortunately, the footprint puts it pretty much in the center, so I have to bring it out. Now I can either have it going all the way out like that, or if I make it into a hole and look closer, it'll actually embed that into the face. So you can play around with this. So right now, like if I group this, it's not going to like it. The red means it's rendering. And so that produces a very interesting shape there. So you can texture your piece like this. Just watch out that it goes all the way through on that. So I could undo that. Or if I make it solid, I have to make sure it's going to be the width of this piece. So turn it down just a bit so it matches. And so now if I group it, more complex shapes take a little longer to render. Change the color so it's easier to see. You can see that I put a weave texture on the side. So this could be a great way to make things more aesthetic, or a way to add like grips or anything else to the outside of your surface. Now, I've actually used this at quite a few trade shows, and one thing I noticed is that when it has a full pipe jar on top, it does get a little top heavy, so I wanted to put some weight in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add a cavity that could take either, I could pour in some plaster, or I've got a ton of these fender washers, and so I'm going to make a space big enough to accommodate a load of them. And you could also like pour in some plaster or cement and use that as a weight. Just make sure that no matter what it doesn't come close to where the food makes contact. And actually, you'll probably want to use washers just because they're removable. But you could do this but you could add some different things. So I know my washers have a diameter of 33 millimeters. So I'm going to use a box and a hole. Let's see. So just scale that up to 33. Let's type it in. This 33. So now if I focus on those, you can see how they're lining up. So again, I'm going to use my, oops, what did I do wrong here? Oops, I accidentally made the height on it 33. So 33. 33. So if you do something like this, it's because you just clicked on the wrong dimensions. So you're probably going to make that mistake a lot. This has to be 33 because this is going to be the way I access that. And make it longer than it has to be. So now I'm going to center it. And because I'm using the top of the cylinder, I'm going to rotate this sideways, and make this the basis for my cavity. So now focusing on that, I smoothed out the circle or the cylinder because if you click on the menu for that, it gives you an option for the number of sides and bevel. The less sides you have, the blockier it's going to look. The more sides, it's smoother, going to be smoother. Bevel adds an edge to it, but won't need that in here. And so now, take that and line it up to that edge. Make both these a whole, group them together. And so this doorway hole is what I use to make a cavity. So after making this cavity with just a box and cylinder, I'm going to place it inside. So pretty much the only place I could really put it is kind of in the back, which works just fine because people pull on the front of the dispenser. So I'm going to pitch it down 90 degrees. Let's see here. And yacht 90 as well. So by placing it inside, I can then play around with the dimensions of it, make it longer or shorter, as long as the width stays 33. And yeah, I'll go ahead and center that. And height-wise, it's about 66 at 33. So let's make it 66. So that way I can maybe put double, but notice that that's starting to get close to the point here where that's making the funnel, so that's not going to work. But I could copy and paste that. And smush that down. Oops, don't want to do that. I'm going to ungroup that and smush down the box. Pull that down. And do it that way. So I have two domes, but when I bring them over my main body, they hopefully don't interfere with anything inside. Shape. And I can see now that it's already touching the bottom part of the chute, so that's not going to have to drop it lower. And I could go down to 34 millimeters in height. So I just need to drop the square here. Make sure this dimension's the same. 33, 33. And do it that way. So now that I've looked at that, there's actually a design issue. So if I group that right now, those holes that I put in would go all the way through and wouldn't work. So this is why you want to switch between like transparent and normal mode, just so you could see all that. But this is something that I could easily correct. So if I pull this up in transparent mode, I could see it crosses here. So ungroup. Pull these both out. And so I want to make these narrower, so I'll say about 35, if I find the right axis. And so you can play around as you design, just always check your shape, make sure it's on the same side. It's not going to cause interference or hit something weird. So make those 35. Cylinders 35 in width. And then just regroup those and play with them. So I removed the blue lip piece here, but now that I do this, I can check on the edge here and see that it's not going through. And it does go underneath the tunnel for the candy here on the dispenser. So make this transparent. And now when I group it, I'll just group everything in the shape here. It reduces the holes on the bottom, and when I make it transparent, it's all the way through there. So I'll go ahead and fix the other piece, but here is a basic way you can make, or you can modify, an object on Thingiverse for 3D printing for your own needs.